Hello everybody. So I thought I'd just make a quick informative video on how to help with and cure curled toes in newly hatched chicks, and one of them also had splay leg, and I'm just going to tell you about my experience quickly and how I cured that. So I'm a bit tired. I'm going to try and make this video quick. It's been a very long 2 days with these quail chicks. I'm sure this would work also in just regular chicken chicks as well. But yeah, it's been a very long couple days. I essentially assisted hatched 6 quail eggs. Basically had to end up hatching them completely by myself, like fully for them, which is, you know, not usually the greatest outcome, but surprisingly I managed to save all 6. And I'll tell you a little bit about that quickly. So first of all, I got a cheap incubator. That was my first mistake. Do not cheap out on your incubators. I've learned this, you know, very fully. I got a $40 incubator. I thought it was great. Also, this is only my first, second and a half-ish time hatching eggs, and so I thought it would be fine. Was not. Essentially what happened was this incubator did not have proper humidity. You couldn't really control the humidity very much. I had that thing full of water all of the time, and it just wasn't adequate. So what happened was all of the chicks developed to full development. It was hatch day. There was about 5 that just hatched by themselves, and all was well. But then I had 20 eggs in there, okay? So 5 hatched with no assistance. I was like, this is great, they're hatching. I could see eggs wiggling, but they weren't coming out, and the day was going on, and it was starting to come into the night, and I was starting to get worried because I'm like, why are these eggs hatching but are wiggling and stuff, and they're pipped but they're not coming out, right? Like that. And usually once they've pipped, they come out. Well, quails are really fast and compared to chickens, but you know, usually they come out really quickly. What is going on? I'm googling and googling and googling. So what I ended up doing was helping them by opening up the pip hole that they had already made bigger, and opening up that membrane so they could breathe in case they were having troubles, and they just weren't coming out. I waited half the day. I pipped them all, waited all evening late into the night, and they still hadn't come out. And I was like, okay, this is not good. So then I opened it up even more and more and more, and then I would wait an hour, and then I'd come back, and nothing would be different, and this just kept going on and on. They weren't coming out of these eggs. And then I waited till I think it was 12 o'clock at night, and I finally, you know, started candling all of the chicks, because I'm like, what's going on? So I started candling all the eggs, and all of them except for a few were fully developed and ready to come out, and they were moving, and I could see them, and some of them were pipped and they weren't coming out, and I'm like, what is happening? So I ended up opening the eggs up even further, came to realize that they were all what's the word I'm looking for? They were all shrink wrapped. There's a word for it, but I'm so tired. Essentially, the membranes shrink wrapped around all of the chicks because there was not enough humidity. So even before they hatched, all of these eggs were shrink wrapped because they weren't getting the proper humidity. So I had to essentially hatch all 6 eggs that were left by hand, completely open them. I was using a little pin to kind of slide the membranes and kind of cut the membranes, watching out for blood vessels. I would kind of essentially open up the whole top of the egg, and I was hoping they would push themselves out, but they weren't, because they were just in there for too long and they were weak, and Their toes were starting to curl, and like everything was just going bad. And so essentially, like, I did everything for the chick. They kind of pushed themselves out at the end, and then they would like lay there with their umbilical cord still attached to the egg, and then it would come off. And they were just like literally laying in the incubator. They weren't standing. They couldn't walk. Their legs weren't working. Their toes were curled in. Like, none of them could stand. They were just laying flat in the incubator. Really, it was not a good sight, and I thought these 6 chicks are gone. Like, there's no way. But, you know, I let them just lay in the incubator for a long time to, like, make sure they were regain their strength after all of that, right? And then I put them all in a bowl, first of all. So I'll show you here. Everybody, as you can see, this is the last one left who's still having some issues, but its toes aren't curled anymore. Don't mind all the poop. I'm gonna clean this up soon. So I put them all in this bowl with this little here, stand up. I put them all in this little bowl with this because it had some grip for them to kind of grip onto. And they all just kind of laid there for a long time. I left them overnight to kind of just regain their strength and everything. Some of them were looking a little bit stronger. And the next morning we taped their feet. So I don't have any pictures to show you, but what I did was I got that if you were to put gauze on and you have that whitish clear bandage tape, that was what I used. So what we did is, you can see this one here was one of the ones, but she's just sleeping because she likes to sleep like that now. But now she can walk. Whereas before, and this was one of them, you can see it's kind of struggling, but after they've been in here, this was one of them that couldn't walk either, and now it's fine. So they kind of start off like this, and then the more they kind of work at it and stuff, this was one that couldn't walk. That was one that couldn't walk. This one, these two back here, one of these ones, might be this one who's taking a nap. This one is one of the ones that couldn't walk. It's sleeping though. Anyways, so, oops, sorry guys. So essentially, they all were in this bowl like this before. Couldn't walk, they're flailing around like this. So I taped their toes with this bandage tape. So essentially we had their feet flat out and taped one each side, sticky side on their foot so that it held it in place, and then we put another one on top, cut it around, and then put them back in the bowl and let them kind of rest up a bit after that. And then what I did was I went to the dollar store and I got these small little salt and pepper shakers, or spice rack things, and I'll show you what we do with these. So I take the chick that's the one that's in the bowl that's having trouble standing, and I put him in the little cup. There you go. And essentially, if he goes in the right way, there, it's kind of hard to see, but it's kind of making him, stand up. There we go. See? So it's kind of making him stand up like this. And so this is what I would do with the chicks. I would put them in these for about a half an hour at a time, not too long. I don't want to stress them out. But as you can see, it's making him stand and use his legs and not lay down. And they kind of start off flopping around like this, but then the more that you do it, they get better and better and better. So I usually do this for about a half an hour, and I keep them in the brooder, kind of under the light, but not directly under the light because it gets a little bit warm in the glass. Here he is. And another thing I was doing was just holding them in my hand like this, so that they kind of have to be standing. His little feet are in there, pushed up against my hand, and he just kind of rests in my hand like this, and he's having to use his feet to stand in there, and then he kind of has a little rest. And I've been walking around holding chicks for the last 2 days. But essentially, I was just kind of letting them have breaks in the bowls, and then putting them in these with their feet taped, and then kind of like giving them breaks and then doing that. And then once they had the tape on for about 12 hours, I took it off, and their toes weren't curled anymore. They were flat open. And what I did was, as soon as I took them out of the tape, I put them right into here. So they're immediately stretching their toes open, having to kind of stand up. They're kind of having to use their feet, right? And then just kept the process of putting them in here for half an hour, putting them back in the bowl, putting them in here for half an hour, and putting them back in the bowl. And then that process, by the end of the day, a lot of them, like this morning, I had 5 chicks in that bowl that couldn't walk, and now they are all in the brooder together, walking around. Some of them are, still a little wibbly wobbly, but the more that they're in there, the better it gets. Because if you look here, they're all like standing together, right? So they're all like kind of leaning on each other, and leaning up against the little, toy, our little fluffy chicken I have in there, and it's just strengthening their legs. And it's just been a really crazy experience. But in the end, I saved all 6 chicks. I hatched all of them essentially by hand, got them out of the eggs. I also had to syringe give them water as well. So after a good chunk of time had passed, their yolk sac is no longer, they're not getting any nutrients from their yolk sac anymore. So I just kind of started syringe feeding them water as well, kind of in between, like going in the little salt shaker and into the bowl. So yeah, so for about this morning, I had 5 chicks that I was rotating between bowls and shakers and giving water, and then holding some of them, and that kind of stuff. And now we have only 1 chick left, and all of the other ones, are kind of waddling over to the food and the water, and they're in with the rest of the chicks, and they're doing really well. So in short, I will say that the best way to heal curled toes in newborn chicks is to get the bandage tape that you would use for gauzes, to like put a gauze on, that clear bandage tape, or you can even use band-aids and cut the little sticky part off. You put one on the bottom, one on the top, you straighten out their toes, stick them together so that their feet have to stay that way between the 2 band-aids or bandages, and then you let that sit for 12 hours. Get yourself a little cup, a jar, a tube that's the correct size for your chicks. The quails were a lot smaller, so I had to use something like this. The chickens might be good in like a mason jar or something like that. Something that has to make them kind of like stand up in the cup. It helps strengthen their legs. It also helps with splay leg, because one of them was having splay leg. So I gave her a little bit extra time in the cup, because it just helps strengthen her legs and keep them like in that position. After the 12 hours, take the tape off, and you're going to notice that the toes are no longer all like curled up anymore. They're going to be a little bit floppy, but they're going to be like open. And then immediately put them back in the cup. When they're in the cup, have them in the brooder. I'll show you with this one. So this little guy just got his tape taken off a few hours ago, and he's already doing really well. Like, his toes are no longer curled. Sorry, buddy. They don't really like going in the cup. You can do it. There we go. Okay. So he's back in the cup, and see, it makes them stand like that, and he's having to stretch his toes out, and it's really good. So then what you do is I put them back in here, but do not put them directly under your heat source, because the glass is going to get hot. It's going to get hot in there. So I kind of have him like maybe off to the side a little bit like this. He's kind of like under the lamp, so he's going to get the warmth, but he's like off to the side. And then you just leave him in there for a little bit of time, about a half an hour, and then I'll take them out and give them a little break in the bowl. Let them hang out in the bowl, encourage them to stand in the bowl, but if they need to lay down and have a break, let them lay down and have a break. And then put him back in the cup. See, look, you see how he's having to stand like that? That is so good for his little legs and his little toes. So if you do that during the day, by the end of the day, your chicks will probably be able to walk. And this one, like, could not walk this morning at all. And now you can see, like, you know, it's still a little wibbly, but it's okay. And this one was like that one was exactly the same. 6 of the chicks in here could not walk yesterday morning. You know, it's just crazy. Like, you see, they're still a little bit, you know, wibbly, but they get stronger and stronger and stronger. See, this one's making his way over to the water and food, and it's gonna be fine. So yeah, that is my advice. What worked for me, I just saved 6 baby quail by doing that. They're all walking, they're all eating, except for the very last one. And probably by tomorrow, we won't even be able to tell who couldn't and who could walk and who hatched by themselves and who I had to hatch for them. And yeah, if you have any questions, please put it down in the comments. But yeah, that's what worked for me. I'm very happy. I'm very happy. I thought for sure I was going to lose a lot of them, but I'm very proud of myself for, you know, sticking with it and helping them. And yeah, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm a very new, you know, chick person. This is only like my second time having chicks. The first time I had chicken chicks, and now I have quail chicks. So I'm very new, but I, you know, did a lot of Googling, and I think I did a good job. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope this was informative. I hope it helps you, and have a good one.